Hey guys, I'm back today with my next class, the next topic on anatomy of pharynx, which is going to be about Walde's ring. Now, Walde's ring is a group of lymphoid tissue which guards the opening of the aerodigestive tract. Now, while I was talking about the lectures, the previous ones about nasopharynx and oropharynx, I've slightly grazed through some of the structures which is forming this Walde's ring, like the tubal tonsils, the adenoids, the palatine tonsils, the lingual tonsils. In this class, I'll be doing them more in details. So let's start our class now.
So let's start our topic today, which is Walde's ring. Now, what is this Walde's ring? And as I was telling you, it is a group of gut associated lymphoid tissue aggregates which is present in the entry point of the aerodigestive tract. Now, they are located in particularly in the form of a circumpharyngeal ring in the subepithelial layer around the nasopharynx and oropharynx. What are these components that is making up the Walde's ring? Before I go into the main components, the Walde's ring consists of two rings. One is called an outer ring and the second one is called the inner ring. The outer ring structures are mostly retropharyngeal nodes, the jugulodigastric node, the jugular chain of nodes, the submandibular nodes, the submental nodes. It's basically the group of lymph nodes which is draining the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. These are helping in forming the outer group of the nodes. Whereas when we come to the inner ring, which is the more important part that we are going to be discussing about, it consists of various structures like, as I've told you before, is the nasopharyngeal tonsil, also known as the adenoid, the tubal tonsil, the palatine tonsil, the lingual tonsil. These are the four main components which is forming the inner ring of the Walde's ring. In addition to this, there are also some lateral pharyngeal bands and some nodules in the posterior pharyngeal wall. So, we are going to be now talking about the components of this inner ring. The first structure is the nasopharyngeal tonsil, also known as the adenoids. It is situated posterior-superiorly at the junction of the roof and the posterior wall of the nasopharynx. Next is the palatine tonsils, which is a part of the oropharynx. It is situated anterolaterally in the lateral walls of the oropharynx. The third structure are the lingual tonsils, which is situated antero-inferiorly on the back part of the tongue. The fourth important structure here are the tubal tonsils, which is also again a part of the nasopharyngeal wall. It is situated superolaterally just behind the opening of an important structure which is connecting the middle ear with the pharynx, which is the eustachian tube. And two very small structures here, not extremely significant, are the lateral pharyngeal bands, which are present on the lateral wall of the pharynx, and the nodules in the posterior pharyngeal wall. These are seen as very small areas of salmon pink, slightly raised swellings. So, the six components are the adenoids, the palatine tonsil, the lingual tonsils, the tubal tonsils, lateral pharyngeal bands, and the nodules in the posterior pharyngeal wall. Now, here as you can see, these are the structures of the inner ring. The adenoids, the palatine tonsil, the tubal tonsil, these are the lateral pharyngeal bands. These parts are the small nodular swellings on the posterior pharyngeal wall, and these are the lingual tonsil, as you can see over here. So, what is the importance of having this structure guarding or beginning of the aerodigestive tract? Now, these structure they provide a local defense and immunity against harmful intruders which are entering into the aerodigestive tract by acting as protective sentinels. The B lymphocytes in the germinal centers of the follicle, they produce some secretory antibodies mainly of the IgA class. This is the response coming from the B lymphocytes, whereas the T lymphocytes in the parafollicular region, they produce cell-mediated immunity against various viruses, bacteria and fungi. The pathogens which happen to enter into these lymphoid masses are dealt by IgM and IgG antibodies secreted by the plasma cells. So there are two kinds of immune response, two kinds of lymphocytic cells here, the B lymphocytes which are seen in the germinal centers of the follicle and the T lymphocytes which are seen in the parafollicular region. Basically they are providing a local defense and immunity to the upper part of the aerodigestive tract. So now we are going to go into the details about the particular structures which is forming the inner ring of the Walde's ring. The first structure is adenoid. It is also known as the nasopharyngeal tonsil. It is located at the junction of the roof and posterior wall of nasopharynx. It is present at birth. It undergoes rapid growth during infancy. It starts physiologically enlarging up to the age of 6 years. The maximum size is seen at 5 years of age. Next, after this, during the ages of 8 to 10 years, it starts involuting and it atrophies during puberty. Ultimately, it completely disappears by the age of 20. Now, why is this so important? That's because when the adenoid hypertrophies, the problems which it causes is mostly seen in young kids up to the age of about 6, 8 or 10. Adults will never complain of problems causing due to adenoid hypertrophy because the adenoid gland has already atrophied at puberty and it disappears completely by the age of 20. Now this adenoid, it is shaped like a truncated pyramid with a vertically oriented median cleft. This is a very important surface anatomy of adenoid. It has a vertically oriented median cleft. This is how you identify it when you are seeing it through endoscopic picture. Its apex is directed towards the nasal septum and its base at the junction of the roof and posterior wall. The free surface has anteriorly and laterally radiating folds from the bursa of Luschka, which is a median blind recess on the pharyngeal bursa. This extends deep into a posterior and superior direction. Now this adenoid, it does not have any crypts or capsule. This is a very important differentiating point from the palatine tonsils, which has crypts and which has a capsule. The structure of this adenoid, it is lined predominantly by the respiratory epithelium, which is ciliated in nature on the lateral and the inferior parts. So basically it contains the ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium. But along with this, it also contains occasional patches of keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. It is anchored at its superior pole via connective tissue hemicapsule onto which tonsillar fibrous framework attaches. So we see that it has two kinds of epithelium. Obviously the main kind is the ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium, added to it some patches of keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. The adenoid, since it's a singular structure, it receives bilateral supply from the following arteries: the ascending palatine branch of the facial artery, the ascending pharyngeal branch of the external carotid artery, the tonsillar branch of the facial artery, the pharyngeal branch of the third part of maxillary artery, and the artery of the pterygoid canal. Occasionally, an emissary vessel of the inferior hypophyseal artery to the basisphenoid bone also supplies the nasopharyngeal bed. This might be the possible culprit in persistent hemorrhaging post-adenoidectomy, which is a procedure to remove the adenoid in case of adenoid hypertrophies. The lymphatic supply now, it is drained into the upper jugular nodes directly or indirectly via the retropharyngeal and the parapharyngeal nodes. It is supplied by the 9th and the 10th nerve. It carries sensations with these nerves are responsible for referred pain to ear in case of adenoiditis, which is basically inflammation of the adenoids. It is forming a part of the Walde's ring, as I already told you, therefore giving some contribution to the defense system of the upper respiratory tract. Now, clinically, why is this adenoid so important? First, when it is getting inflamed, it is known as adenoiditis. This is predominantly seen in children, peak age being 5. Now, remember when I was telling you about the size of adenoid, I was telling you that the maximum size is seen around the age of 5 to 6, and then after that age it starts involuting and atrophies and completely disappears by the time you reach the adult age. Therefore, this adenoiditis is predominantly seen in children during this peak age of 5. Now, what does this adenoiditis cause? It causes persistent chronic otitis media, it causes mouth breathing, it can also cause intermittent sleep apnea. Now, second, in cases of large adenoids, which is adenoid hypertrophy in children leading to all these persistent problems, we have to go for a surgical removal of the adenoid. The procedure called is adenoidectomy. The procedures, the different ways by which we can perform adenoidectomy are blind curettage, suction diathermy, and suction microdebridement. Now, during this blind curettage, it is very important to avoid hyperextending the cervical spine, as the arch of atlas may pierce through the prevertebral fascia and cause infection and instability of the C-spine. So you see, this I have told you before, this is the normal adenoids. Over here, you can see the size is not too big. But in some cases, in some children, what happens is it undergoes a lot of hypertrophy, leading to such a huge structure. Now, because of this structure enlarging, as you know that the eustachian tube opening lies very close to the lateral wall of the nasopharynx. Therefore, what happens is it blocks the eustachian tube, leading to chronic otitis media. And also, as you can see, it is completely causing nasal obstruction over here, as a result of which it becomes very difficult for the children to breathe through the nose, and hence they start mouth breathing. And because they start mouth breathing, a lot of them develop high arched palate, which is a very typical feature in the adenoid facies. In these cases, therefore, you have to go for adenoidectomy. There are various procedures you can follow to go through with it. The most common one is by blind curettage. Now, next we'll move on to the palatine tonsils. The palatine tonsils, it varies according to age and pathological status. It increases rapidly in size until ages 5 to 6 and maximal size during puberty. Involution starts happening from puberty, and very little lymphoid tissue exists in old age. And just like the adenoids, the palatine tonsils are also a very important culprit of causing the upper respiratory tract infection. You'll be seeing a lot of kids will be coming with enlarged tonsils, persistent problems of chronic tonsillitis, as a result of which they are unable to sleep, they are unable to swallow. It causes difficulty in swallowing. Sometimes it also causes obstructive sleep apnea. Now, these palatine tonsils, they are located in the lateral wall of the oropharynx, located between the palatoglossal and the palatopharyngeal folds in the tonsillar bed, and they are surrounded by a tonsillar capsule. As you can see here, this here is a palatoglossal fold, this here is a palatopharyngeal fold. The tonsil lies in between these two folds in the lateral wall of the oropharynx. It is an ovoid mass of lymphoid tissue associated with the mucosa and with a fixed position and the long axis from superior to inferior. Now, what are the parts of this palatine tonsil? It has two poles, superior and inferior, and it has two surfaces, medial and lateral. Now, let's first talk about the upper pole. The upper pole extends into the soft palate. Its medial surface is covered by a semilunar fold which extends in between the anterior and posterior pillar and encloses a potential space called the supratonsillar fossa. As you can see at the upper pole over here, a semilunar fold of mucous membrane extends from the anterior pillar to the posterior pillar. Hence, the place just below that, it houses a space called the supratonsillar space. Next, the lower pole, it is attached to the tongue. It is a triangular fold of mucous membrane which is seen extending from the anterior pillar to the antero-inferior part of the tonsil, enclosing another space here known as the anterior tonsillar space. The tonsil here is separated from the tongue by a sulcus known as a tonsillolingual sulcus, which sometimes may be the seat of carcinoma. Next, we come into the medial surface. Now, the lining epithelium of tonsils are non-keratinizing stratified squamous epithelium, which dips into the substance of the tonsil sometimes to form crypts. Now, you'll see in the structure here, the epithelium dips into the tonsillar substance, thus it is forming these crypts. Now, opening of 12 to 15 crypts can be seen on the medial surface. Now, one of these crypts, which is in the upper part of the tonsil, it's very large and very deep. Therefore, it is also called the crypta magna or the intratonsillar cleft. It represents the ventral part of the second pharyngeal pouch. Now, from these main crypts, you'll also see arise a lot of secondary crypts within the substance of the tonsil. Now, what is the importance of these crypts? These crypts basically they get filled with cheesy material consisting of the epithelial cells, the bacteria, the food debris, which can be expressed by pressure over the anterior pillar. You'll be seeing in acute follicular tonsillitis or acute membranous tonsillitis, you'll be seeing that when you press the anterior pillar, some cheesy material will come out of these crypts. It happens during that time. Next, we'll come on to the lateral surface, which is presenting with a well-defined fibrous capsule. As I was telling you before, it's a differentiating feature from adenoid and palatine tonsil. The palatine tonsil has a fibrous capsule. It also has a lot of crypts, both of which are not possessed by adenoid. Now, between the capsule and the bed of tonsil is a loose areolar tissue, which is the plane of dissection for tonsillectomy and also the site for peritonsillar abscess. Now, this tonsillar bed is a very important structure. So, this loose areolar tissue that I just told you, it is very important while performing tonsillectomy that you find this particular plane, because this is what gives you a proper tonsillectomy with minimal bleeding. If you do not find the right plane, it is extremely difficult to control the bleed happening from the tonsillectomy. So, to know more about this, we need to know about the tonsil bed. What are the relations, the lateral relations that are coming in relation to the tonsil? Now, the first structure that comes here is the tonsillar capsule. As you know, this is the fibrous capsule. Next comes the loose areolar tissue, which is containing the paratonsillar veins. Now, this loose areolar tissue is extremely important. As I was telling you, this is the plane that you have to find while performing the tonsillectomy. After that comes the pharyngobasilar fascia. Next comes the superior constrictor muscle. The next followed by the buccopharyngeal fascia. As you know, these are all parts of the pharyngeal wall. Next comes the styloglossus muscle right over here. Next, there lies the glossopharyngeal nerve, as you can see over here. Next is the facial artery, the medial pterygoid muscle, the submandibular gland, and the angle of the mandible. These are all very important structure of the tonsillar bed. So, if we go again from the beginning, the relations from medial to lateral of the tonsillar bed are the tonsillar capsule, loose areolar tissue containing the paratonsillar veins, pharyngobasilar fascia, superior constrictor muscle, buccopharyngeal fascia, styloglossus muscle, glossopharyngeal nerve, facial artery, medial pterygoid muscle, submandibular gland, and lastly the angle of the mandible. Now, tonsil is supplied by 5 arteries. It is similar to some of the arteries which is supplying the adenoids. It is supplied by the tonsillar branch of the facial artery, which is the main arterial supply of the tonsil. Ascending pharyngeal artery branch from the external carotid, ascending palatine branch of facial artery, dorsal lingual branches of lingual artery, descending palatine branch of maxillary artery. These are all the structures you can see here. The facial artery, which is mainly supplying the tonsillar branch, with this being the main arterial supply, the ascending palatine branch of the facial artery, the lingual artery, which is arising from the external carotid, giving the dorsal lingual branches, the tonsillar branches of ascending pharyngeal artery, which is the branch of the ECA, and the descending palatine branches of the maxillary artery. The veins from the tonsil, which are known as the paratonsillar veins, they join the common facial vein and the pharyngeal venous plexus. When it comes to lymphatics, it pierces the superior constrictor, which is the structure in the tonsillar bed, and then it drains into the upper deep cervical nodes, especially the jugulodigastric node below the angle of mandible. This is extremely important because in cases of tonsillitis, we palpate for the jugulodigastric node just 1 centimeter below and behind the angle of the mandible. This is a very important surface landmark. And lastly, the tonsils, they are supplied by the tonsillar branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve and also the lesser palatine nerve, which comes off the second division, which is the maxillary division of the trigeminal nerve. When we come to the importance of these structures, as I was already telling you, they are a part of the Walde's ring, and hence they are forming the first line of defense to the upper respiratory tract. And as I already told you before, clinically, why is it so important? Because inflammation of these palatine tonsils is what we know as tonsillitis. It can be acute, it can be chronic. And sometimes pain can be referred to the middle ear in tonsillitis because of a shared supply by the 9th cranial nerve, also known as the glossopharyngeal nerve. Secondly, clinically, internal carotid artery is just lying 2.5 centimeter posterolateral to tonsils. This is a very important anatomical location. Next, peritonsillar abscess is something that can occur as a consequence from tonsillitis, which occurs right outside the tonsillar capsule. And drainage in these cases is achieved by directly incising the most prominent bulging part of the collection. You can see here, this picture over here shows enlarged tonsils or tonsillitis. As you can see, these are pus which are draining from the crypts of the tonsil, and you can see how it has narrowed the airway over here. This is the reason why it can cause sleep apnea in a lot of patients. Now you can see in this second picture over here is what this arrow is showing the peritonsillar abscess, also known as quinsy, where abscess occurs just outside the fibrous capsule of the tonsil, and the tonsil is pushed medially towards this side. And drainage is done by giving an incision over the most fluctuant part over here. And lastly, clinically important is that paratonsillar veins, which are found in the loose areolar tissue, which is your plane of dissection, that is the usual culprit for post-tonsillectomy bleeders. It's very important to explore that if a case of secondary hemorrhage comes to you. Next, we'll move on to the third structure, which is the lingual tonsils. Lingual tonsils are a collection of lymphatic tissue which is located in the lamina propria of the root of the tongue. Now, these structures are covered with the same epithelium as that of palatine tonsils because both of them form a part of the oropharynx. They're covered by the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, which invaginates inwards, forming crypts. Therefore, what we see here is that both palatine tonsil and lingual tonsil have crypts. Now, beneath this epithelium is a layer of lymphoid nodules which contains lymphocytes. The mucous glands at the base of the tongue, they are drained through several ducts into the crypt of the lingual tonsils. The secretion of these mucous glands keep the crypt clean and free of any debris. As you can see from the structure here, this is the lining epithelium, the non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, and inside that lies all the lymphoid nodules. The arterial supply is again exactly similar to that of the palatine tonsils, which are the lingual artery, the tonsillar artery, the ascending palatine artery, descending palatine artery, and the ascending pharyngeal artery. As you can see in the structure here, this is the location of the lingual tonsils. Lies in the lamina propria of the root of the tongue, and it is getting its nerve supply from the tonsillar plexus formed by the glossopharyngeal and the vagus nerves. Again, coming back to the importance, it is forming a part of the Waldear's ring and thus helping in lodging an immune response. Now, clinically, this structure can have a lot of importance because it can be the seat of squamous cell carcinoma in many cases. And also, secondly, if you see if the lingual tonsils undergo hypertrophy or enlargement, it can exacerbate sleep apnea because, as you can see here, this is the location of the lingual tonsils. If this hypertrophies and fills up this area, it will cause an obstruction in the respiratory passage, therefore causing sleep apnea. Last of all, the last structure which we'll study is the tubal tonsil. It is a subepithelial group of lymphoid tissue situated bilaterally at the tubal elevation. As you can see here in this image here, this is the eustachian tube opening, and posterior and superior to that lies the tubal elevation, which houses the tubal tonsils. Since it is very close to the torus tubarius, it is also known as the tonsils of the torus tubarius. Also, it has another name which is known as the Gerlach's tonsils. It is lined by the nasopharyngeal epithelium, which is basically ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Crypts are seen here as well. So thus the only structure in the Waldear's ring which does not have crypts is the adenoids. This structure receives its arterial supply from the sphenopalatine artery and the ascending pharyngeal artery, and its lymphatic drainage goes into the retropharyngeal and the deep cervical lymph nodes. An important clinical importance about this structure is that when it's enlarged, it causes the eustachian tube occlusion. As you can see, this was the eustachian tube opening. If it enlarges, it will cause the occlusion of the eustachian tube, thus leading to problems from that like chronic otitis media. So we have covered all the structures of the Waldear's ring, which are the adenoids, the palatine tonsils, the lingual tonsils, the tubal tonsils, and also I've told you the structures of the outer ring. This has been a very important short note that usually comes during exams. So after this, in the next video, I'll be going into the muscles of the pharynx. If my video has helped you, kindly press on the like button and share with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. Press on the bell icon to be notified of any time I'm posting my next video. Thank you.